morning, everyone. Good morning, speakers. So it's and good evening there, Mr. Ganu. So glad.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. Uh, it's a lovely morning here, and I think the hall will soon start exuding energy as we start speaking. Dr. Palkar's talk, the macroeconomic view, the helicopter view of the startup ecosystem, where we are, what the center is doing, what we are trying to do, I think is a good starting point for all of us to take off. What I will do is give a quick intro of the speakers that we are here so we get the context. Dr. Palkar has introduced the audience, which is basically a filtered audience of people who participated in contests and have gone to the next level for the benefit of speakers. So, and these were not just contests. Contests have been there as some or the other way, either as a judge or as a trainer and so on. So they have also gone through some degree of mentoring training as well. So some of these terms are known to them. The background is where we can talk to them from that angle. Okay. So the panel we have here, as ma'am said, Kapil Khangaonkar spent more than a decade and a half in the IT space. Engineering graduate, I think Kapil he Maher asil na Pune University, MBA marketing. So he's done MBA marketing from Pune Univ and done stints with companies like BMC, Unican, and the last one with this renowned company called Calsoft. So been a techie all through, and within the tech space, more than engineering, spent a lot of time in business development. So selling software services and products to people across the globe. And from there arose this problem, and we'll talk about this more as we go along. So in 2016, he started this company called Cloudura. He's got some very, very marquee angel investors, founders of unicorn companies and so on. And what they do is they address the challenge faced by IT companies for marketing. Because how do you, I mean, this problem is faced by all kinds of companies. But IT companies who want to market their services, how do you identify the customer? So you do LinkedIn, you do website and Twitter, and you do searches and so on. So his enterprise, using very advanced artificial intelligence technology, hundreds of parameters, they track down the customer for you. So it's brilliant. We'll talk along with the experiences. We'll talk about the founders, their work, and so on, because that's learning in itself. Then, so one of the key things from a Kapil angle, as I was seeing, and I've intimately worked with him, is you don't have to work, go far out to find out problem statements to create startups. You don't have to find out ki, world mein ye problem hai, India mein. These can come, the problems can very much be a part of your personal or professional lives. I think that's what Kapil stands for. Sunil's got a very interesting profile. He's a computer tech person, worked with the leading global MNCs like Hewlett Packard, Mentor Graphics, CA, and so on. And apart from these, large corporates also work with early stage companies. So, say an enterprise which some of us may or may not have heard of, something like Dingana, which was in the music space and later acquired by RDO, later acquired by Pandora. So, he's worked with companies where he built up tech from start, was part of systems development, strategy, etc. from the very beginning. And the other thing about Sunil is the diversity of work. So from music on one hand to a company called Cobalt, which did digital marketing for people like General Motors and so on in the US. So addressing those markets. His stint before last stint was a company called Mezi, which was a artificial intelligence powered chatbot service. So when you go to many of these banking websites, etc., you get a chatbot. So, so that based service, which was acquired by Amex, the same founders set up another company called Zenny, which does technology-based finance and accounting solutions for startups in the US. So the founders are there, and he heads the technology, the engineering space. So in that sense, done that entire large corp to early stage companies, and also does some other things in theater. Very enthusiastic theater person and so on. So very colorful personality. So, I mean, one can have an example of having your cake and eating it too. That's Sunil, I think, in a nutshell. But before I go over to introducing Madhukar, I think one last thing, I would urge you to check out Sunil's profile as well on LinkedIn. It's a good example of how a LinkedIn profile can be written, Sunil, because each kind of job that he's done, is, we do write, what we did, etc. But point-wise, the achievement. So I remember, in your first job, for our second job, you recruited people, and that was an achievement. So these achievements get lost, even in the professional world. I think that's a good way to capture one's achievements. It's objective, it doesn't glorify, but very nice way to write a LinkedIn profile. Then, basically, we've got Madhukar Bhatia. So I think I was just talking to him here. One of the things I realized is, so apart from a stellar academic background, IIT, Mumbai, BTech, MTech, and phenomenal companies throughout, Advanced Graphics, PTC, Veritas, Symphony, so leaders in their space, and then N-Factorial, Sapiens, where he was a co-founder. So I think from a career angle, Madhukar, I think it was the tech, building or supporting the strategy of building high-end systems for larger organizations, then applying that knowledge to setting something up on your own, which is Sapiens, because I think those principles are far different, that you don't get to learn bottom-up. You have to learn kind of top-down. So having done that, as also I think midway, I think that N-Factorial experience I felt where you're advising product companies to, so I think you've done that as well. The advisory part also you've covered. So actually working on a solution, advising on a solution, and setting up a solution. So it's like the Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh kind of a thing, basically. So I think that's a very interesting thing. And now, after having done all of this, he works with a Pune-based VC firm. He's a managing partner there called Pentathlon Ventures. And their USP, again, is working with deep tech or tech startups. And we'll, in the course of things, also break some myths, and we'll ask him, what is tech and deep tech? Because that deep tech is something really very different. Even when we pitch companies to VCs, we felt that this is a great technology company. And when we talk to them, realize that this is very simple hai. And then what actually is happening in the market is far higher. So we'll get into that. Last, but as it is said, not the least, Mr. Anand Ganu. And again, something interesting to learn from the profile is when I asked him, sir, profile, I think the first email I got was his organization, which is Garje Marathi. So I think ते मराठीमध्ये म्हणे ना, म्हणजे कर्म हेच सगळं असं ते मला वाटतं त्यांचं आहे की ते हे काम केलं. सो ही इज अ बी फार्म टेक्निकली बाय प्रोफेशन. आय एम शुअर ही इज डन अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स इन लाईफ. टेक्निकली त्या प्रोफाईलमध्ये दिसत नाहीत, पण त्यांच्या गरजे मराठीबद्दल सर्व काही होतं. आणि व्हॉट गरजे मराठी इज, आणि इथे मला वाटतं सगळ्यांना मराठी कळतं. अँड मधुकर, हाऊ आर यू विथ मराठी? ओके, ग्रेट. सो मराठीत बोलतो, म्हणजे ॲटलिस्ट ते मराठी याच्याकरता इतकं काम करतात, तर कमीत कमी आपण त्यांची इंट्रोडक्शन मराठीमध्ये करू शकतो. तर US मध्ये बेस्ड आहेत, आणि नावच त्यांनी असं दिलं आहे की मराठी सर्वार्थानी. म्हणजे 4 ऑब्जेक्टिव्स गरजे मराठीचे ते म्हणतात की एक इज, आता त्याला खूप पटकन मला मराठी शब्द सुचत नाही सर, माफ करा. नेटवर्किंग, मेंटॉरिंग, गिव्हिंग बॅक टू सोसायटी, आणि सेलिब्रेटिंग इन द जनरल सेन्स मराठी. म्हणजे ते मराठी लोक सक्सेसफुल लोकांना ती पुस्तक पण लिहित आहेत, लोकांना निस्वार्थीपणे करेक्ट पण करून देतात की अरे तुझं इथे काम होईल, तुझं तिकडे होईल, तुम्ही भेटून घ्या, अशा भावनेने ती काम करतायत. त्यांच्या याच्यावरती जसे आपल्या ईमेलमध्ये डिस्क्लेमर असतात की हे चुकलं तर ही रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी, त्यांच्या खाली मला वाटतं सर तुम्ही डिस्क्लेमर सारखाच दिलेला आहे की हे सगळं नॉन प्रॉफिट काम आहे, असं बोल्डमध्ये त्यांच्या ईमेलमध्ये काही डिस्क्लेमर येतो. तर त्यांचं चांगलं व्हावं, मराठी लोक एकत्र यावे जगभरामध्ये, दॅट इज ऑब्जेक्टिव्ह. या संस्थेचे जवळजवळ 6,000 मेंबर आहेत, 25 चॅप्टर्स आहेत, आणि अनेक ठिकाणी अनेक चांगल्या इथे आहे किंवा अनेक पुण्यातल्या पण संस्थांबरोबरती. आणि आय एम शुअर जगभरामध्ये एमओज असतील की जसे सर आता इथे आहेत तसं कॉर्डिनेट आणि काम करता येईल. सो विथ धिस ब्रीफ इंट्रोडक्शन वी विल स्टार्ट. आय थिंक इट इज व्हेरी इम्पॉर्टंट फॉर अस टू अंडरस्टँड. आणि एक 10-15 मिनिटांमध्ये थोडंसं जरी वेळ लागला असेल तर आपण गप्पा जर मारणार असू तर आपल्याला माहिती पाहिजे की कोण कोण कट्ट्यावरती बसलेला आहे, आणि दिस लाईक कट्टा. सो ॲट द एंड ऑफ द डे आपण तितकेच इन्फॉर्मली प्रश्न विचारा. यू नेवर नो कुठून काय आयडिया येऊन काय सुरुवात होईल हे माहिती नाही. लेट अस नॉट फॉरगेट दॅट ॲमेझॉन स्टार्टेड ॲज अ बुक स्टोअर. ओके, अँड अशा खूप साऱ्या बऱ्याचशा स्टोरीज तशाच आहेत बेसिकली, राईट. आणि परवा जस्ट हे एक लास्ट लाईन सांगतो आणि चालू करतो. एक असंच एका इव्हेंटला मी बोलत होतो, आणि त्यात फाउंडर नी इतकं छान हे केलं की ते म्हटलं की आपण परदेशामध्ये म्हणतो की गराज स्टार्टअप आहे आमच्याकडे, आणि गॅरेजमध्ये आम्ही चालू केली. तर ते म्हटलं की ते ठीक आहे ते, आणि ऑफकोर्स पुणेरी फाउंडर होता त्यामुळे अजून एक. ते म्हटलं त्याचं काय कौतुक ना, आमच्याकडे ते गॅरेज पण नव्हतं. सो आय एम शुअर आपल्यापैकी अनेकांकडे गॅरेज पण नव्हतं. आपण घरी बसून एका टेबलावरती किंवा कॉलेजमध्ये ऑफिसमध्ये चालू करतोय. तर अशा अर्थाने आपण याला घेऊयात. विथ दिट इंट्रोडक्शन मी आता थोडासा ट्रेंड हे रिव्हर्स करतो. मी आनंदजींना रिक्वेस्ट करतो की सर आपल्याला जर एक इंट्रोडक्टरी रिमार्क्स देता आले आणि प्रत्येक स्पीकरना मी सांगेन की त्यांचं एक मनोगत त्यांनी ऐकवावं आणि मग आपण सुरुवात करूयात. आनंदजी, ओव्हर टू यू.
थँक्स अ लॉट. थँक्स फॉर सच अ लवली इंट्रोडक्शन. आणि ह्या म्हणजे मराठी भाषेचा वापर करायचा आहे मला माहित नव्हतं. घरचे मराठी नाव असलं तरी आय ऑलवेज से इट इज अबाउट मराठी पीपल. इट इज नॉट अबाउट मराठी लँग्वेज. बट ऑफकोर्स वी हॅव ग्रेट respect for our language and we are proud of it. Thank you, Vinit, and greetings to fellow panelists as well. I thank SPPU, Research Park Foundation, the Center for Innovation, Incubation Enterprise, and respected Vice Chancellor, Professor Nitin Karmarkar, and Program Director Apurva Palkar for considering me to be worthy of such a esteemed panel. Because these all are high-tech people. I have seen their achievements. I have seen their startups, also not in the startups, the software they have created, which are giving a tough fight to even the one of the सेल्सफोर्सला सुद्धा कॉम्पिटिशन करणारे स्टार्टअप केलेले लोक आहेत, सॉफ्टवेअर इथे लोक आहेत. तर अशांच्या मध्ये मला बसायला मिळालं याचाच मला आनंद वाटतोय. मी नुसतीच माझी इंट्रोडक्शन नाही तर आय वॉन्ट टू टॉक अबाउट व्हॉट आय फील. कारण काय आज मला टॉपिक असा दिला होता की वी हॅव टू टॉक अबाउट बिल्डिंग सक्सेसफुल स्टार्टअप अर्ली स्टेज असेन्शियल्स. सो मी अर्ली स्टेज असेन्शियल्स विषयी माझ्या काय कल्पना आहेत त्या मी शेअर करतो. आता समोर बसलेले ऍज वेल एज स्टेजवरती बसलेले सगळ्यांना स्टार्टअप म्हणजे काय, त्याची काय सिस्टीम असते, कसं अगदी पूर्ण माहिती आहे. पण माझं मनोगत मी व्यक्त करायचा प्रयत्न करतो. इट इज अ पॅनल डिस्कशन, आय नो दॅट, अँड बट ऑल पॅनलिस्ट आर पार्टिसिपेटिंग इन पर्सन. आय एम द ओनली वन हू इज जॉईनिंग व्हर्च्युअली. आणि माझा पास्ट एक्सपिरियन्स टेल्स मी the odd one like me who joins virtually many times disturbs the smooth flow of the panel discussion. So as I'm giving this opportunity, I will take maximum chance to express myself, maximum 10 minutes, not more than that. And I hope the moderator as well as our panelists have permission for me to do so. Today's topic is building successful startup, early stage essentials. Let me start with my own experience of building Garje Marathi Global, which we consider as a startup itself. We had a novel idea of bringing people together on a platform to share knowledge, education, to promote entrepreneurship, for peer-to-peer interaction, to mentor those who need support, and of course, as Vinit said, to celebrate Marathi success. There was this unique idea, there was a marketable product, there was experienced, knowledgeable team, there was value for a customer, and definite opportunity to scale it up. And the Garje Marathi progressed. As Vinit mentioned, that we are in 25 countries, we have more than 7,000 involved members, collaboration with reputed institutions like SPPU, of course, thanks to our Vice Chancellor and Dr. Apurva Palkar. But with this, Garje Marathi has progressed in the last 3-4 years, and we are on a point to reach a value worth $250,000. How did we reach there? Who was our inspiration? One example that we kept as our inspiration all along was life of the greatest king of all, our own Sri Shivaji Maharaj. What happened in Shiva Mandir on Raireshwar, the birthplace of, which is a birthplace of Swarajya, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj took a Swarajya oath at Raireshwar at the age of 16 on 27th April 1645. What sort of great launch of a startup was that? Maharaja had unique idea, definite value for the customers, very scalable idea. Like any startup, his team was just himself and few handful young Maule who had clear vision of building a team with a perfectly defined hierarchy role and what the team, great team they built. Mind you, he started at the age of 16. That proves that many Pandits must have told you, your gurus must have told you that you are never too young to have your own start. As the story goes, this 16-year-old Maharaj and his few handful Maules took an oath of Swarajya with their blood. The team joined, the team took a pledge with their sweat and blood. The team that comes together with this sort of association stays on, and this sort of a enterprise startup is definitely going to be successful. Early stage essentials were there. They had the base foundation, potentially scalable idea for the market that was in the need, and they had potential to generate value. Maharaj and his team for next 3 decades focused their energy and pursued the dream, focused on product development, building customer base. I'm using startup terminology, establish a strong cash flow, in this case a value, and gathering market data also. Remember Bharji Naik, the greatest spy of Shivaji? So all these were there. And as they took it as a means now retrospectively we think that that was one of the best startup. So they also had all the problems which most of the startups face. And as we are told that startups, 90% of startups fail because of various reasons. So Shivaji Maharaj also had problem. What problems does the startup get? That running out of cash or failing to raise capital fund, market need is not there as it required, get out competed, flawed business model, regulatory challenges, pricing, not the right team, product mistime, pure product disharmony amongst the investors or the team, and most importantly, burned out or lack motivation and passion. You will find a corresponding occurrence in Shivaji Maharaj journey as well, but he successfully tackled with that. He also had to use the tools for the startups. And most of the startups think of using various technology tools. When majority of startups want to make use of the customer data, or they think of analytics, advertising tools, help desk, CRMs, attributions, and dozen other categories. It is important to the first to decide whether to build a tool or to buy the tool, right tool, and integrating it with at the right moment, switch between the qualitative and quantitative tools with a logic, test drive, uh, test drive the off-shelf tools, and not to drown in the research. Calculate the full cost of tools, not to overdose with the quantitative data, and to gauge the success. Under the leadership of Shivaji, Kanuji developed a naval base at Vijayadurga, featuring the dockyard facilities for the building vessels, mounting guns, and making ships seaworthy. At the peak size, when that startup was really good, they had 800 ships meant for the stealth warship, and they had more than 200,000 men. Right tool at the right time with the right CEO or CTO, and operation. And mind you, the Operation Navy started by Shivaji Maharaj was in the year 1654. He waited for the right time to do that. Maharaja built his forts. He had his factories to produce swords, daggers, bows and arrows. But he bought guns and cannons from Portuguese and British. Right tool at the right time. Build what you can, but buy what you need. And you do not have capacity to make it. Same, I want to extend this simile a little bit, that we all faced problems because of COVID. Even Shivaji Raje faced the similar problems when the Mirza Raje attacked him and cornered him. Shivaji Raje downsized his army, gave away large number of forts, concentrated all his resources at one place, and averted the total collapse. So what lessons we can learn from this? That as a startup, when you come across the COVID-like situation, you have to look for the funds with the dry powder and with the strategic value, create the funding extension, realign cash burns, reevaluate the product and market fit, attract key talent, focus the early customer success, showcase key metrics. As a matter of fact, this evaluation of your position is important even when everything is going smooth. Shivaji's main strength was manpower. The same applies to any startup. People are soul of any organization. How to hire, whom to hire, when to hire, employees who should wear multiple hats, positions to be outsourced. All these have to be carefully crafted and considered. All of startup entrepreneurs and the very respected panel on the stage, it somehow happened that word startup comes with lots of hype. The startups were there, right? Since the first caveman might have bartered his stone tools for the piece of roasted meat or the cooked grains. When you say you have a startup, you'll be bombarded with lots of big words and terminologies. But I always tell whosoever comes to me for advice or to my team for advice, that I tell them to keep it simple. Do not wear the hat which is too heavy for your head. It is just another business, but you have to run it profitably and smoothly. You have a startup, that doesn't mean that you have to start diluting your equity. That is a common concept that people think that I will dilute equity, I will get investors, and then I will progress. No, you start with your own funds, add to the funds from the friends and families. There is in Maharashtra or in India at least, there are a lot of institutional funds which are easily available. There are numerous government schemes. I don't want to name the schemes, but just to names in NABARD is there, or Mudra loan scheme is there, or MSAB business loans are there. There are lots of schemes. So what any startup should do is to make themselves strong, go to VC or angel with a position of strength. You are not, asking for a favor from an angel. The angel or the VC also needs you to give their money. So uh, there is another vital habit that I personally feel and I learned throughout my entrepreneurial journey, that you take a daily break, maybe just for thinking, be in a physically soothing environment with a zero distraction, maybe for 15 minutes a day, and you will solve a lot of problems. Archimedes had eureka moment for a reason. One last thing and very important thing that I want to tell, that Shivaji Maharaj had Rajyabhishek in year 1676, that created legacy and continuity. Even every startup is not meant for exit, or it did not get acquired. We all have to build. I think we have come beyond that. We all have to build startups that will become very big and acquire other companies from so-called developed countries. Let us position ourselves to get funding from maybe Silicon Valley, because here $1 million they say so easily. Silicon Valley grow to the level that we will acquire these companies and companies around the world, companies from Silicon, and will grow. There is a tremendous scope, and with institutions like SPPU or your mentors, I'm very positive we all can really do great. I think I might have taken a little longer, but because I'm virtually connecting, that's why I thought whatever I want to say, let me finish. With that, thanks a lot, panel, and thanks a lot those who cared to listen to whatever I had to share. Namaste.
Thank you, sir. I think with your, such inspiring talk, I think we are not going to let you go that easy, despite you being on the other side of the digital world. So I think we'll keep coming back to you. But I would like to start off with Madhukar, if you may. So one of the things that we are trying to tackle, and very, very like the foundation, which was said, we started with a person, is like these qualities of founders. And we might keep coming back to it during this hour or so. But what are the top things that you've seen or come to mind? You already invested in some people. So both might have happened. There would have been instances where you felt that a great product, wish the people had, this, or wish they did. And also you would have seen both the positives and negatives. So would love to hear it from you.
So let me first start by just saying that I really enjoyed your talk, Mr. Ganu. It was a very unique and a different way of, I never really thought of that start of the Swarajya as a startup, but very aptly put. So coming back to the qualities of the founders, etc., that we're talking about, let me just take a step back. So I have been a startup person before the term, like Mr. Ganu said, that even when a caveman actually had a startup, that was not really called a startup. So I started my career in 1987 by joining one Dr. Shankar, who was a faculty member in Pune University. He set up computer science department. He had just moved from IIT Kanpur to this place to set this up. I joined him as employee number 2 and became his partner later on in running that startup. So I have been part of startup all my life, except just two things when you talked about Veritas and PTC. And now I am on the other side of the table, a VC, and we know now for sure, whatever you must have read about it, that the VC, the first thing that we are looking for is, or I will say 50% of the weightage is on the founder, who the founder is. Very difficult, but having said that, very difficult to actually pinpoint in a single quality that I'll say, okay, this is what we're looking for. So whatever I say here is definitely incomplete, but let me make an attempt anyway. So obviously, the person, basically in making a startup successful, you typically see 3 qualities that are required to make it successful. You should have good sales skill, you should have the vision about the product, and you should have a great technical team if you're looking at a tech team startup to build that. So you're definitely looking for always a founder which has at least one Definitely the person has to be very, very strong at, or at least one of the two of the three skills that he brings a good coverage. He's a great salesperson, has a great product vision, and so on. Articulation, ability to really talk passionately about what that person is trying to build, and that passion is not really something that, so it's a codependent thing. It's not that you just know how to talk well and you can talk about your product very passionately. No, you have to be passionate about the product. So sometimes it's a product which makes a founder, and sometimes it is a founder which is making the product. This is a symbiotic relation, because I really am consumed by an idea, and I am not just consumed, I understand it, but I can articulate it also. So the sales is one of the sales skill. Whether you are going to be able to sell to the your customers, you can sell to the investor, you can sell to your employees also. How do you get your first employee? When you have hardly any money and you're working from a garage, if you're working from a garage, you're a rich startup founder, but otherwise you're probably working from your one table in your room. So that sales, this thing is something that we look at. Perseverance. Because startup looks like a very, very glamorous word, but it's a very, very hard plod, I would say. Most of the time, there is nothing really exciting happening. Most of the time, you're just wondering about. And I have built 3 startups. 2 of them, I will call them successful, and one, the very first one, failed after we tried for 8 to 9 years, and we had to shut it. So it's a very tough, lonely path. And the perseverance that you can walk through all of those difficulties. You will not just run away at the first few difficulties. So I think, there are less goes on, but I would say these 3 things. And many times when you're looking at a founder while investing, or when I'm mentoring some small startup which we are not investing in, but I'm preparing him to raise fund at some place else. I'll give you an example. I'll not take the name of the company. The founder is someone who represents India in badminton at senior 35 plus age group, and he did not think very highly of that. He thought highly, that's why he has worked so hard to be there, but he never thought that this is something that will interest a VC. And I told him that you should put it in your this is what your background is, because all these are connected skills. How did you become a good person who is good enough to represent India in that? So we are just looking for all of these things to just figure out. Yeah.
Correct. No, that's lovely. I think just to summarize for the benefit of all of you, I think one word which came up, and these are slightly unusual words as well that we. So yes, we hear of aggression and so on. So one of the things which is contrary and which is perseverance. Correct. So that feeling that you guys will, as a founder, you will hang on there.
So I would say the word aggression in my mind doesn't work. It's one of those things that you'll see in Shark Tank. In fact, people come and keep sending me so many forward. Oh, you saw that episode in Shark Tank. I said that is reality TV. I am a VC investor. I know that is now how things work.
Correct.
And assertiveness is very different from aggression, and having confidence.
Very nicely said.
If you have that deep-seated confidence, everything else follows from
correct.
That. Yeah.
No, I think that's a very, very interesting statement. I think it's a quote, in fact, that assertiveness is very different from aggression. Being polite but firm, of pressing, and being unduly aggressive. But that perseverance, I think, is a big thing, because otherwise, that the feeling that a VC can get that you are in a hurry. Or correct the feeling, but you yourself need to be calm enough to know that I can work there. So that's point 1. And I think that also what Anandji said also reverberates, because that vision was there, ki Swarajya मिळाल्याशिवाय थांबणार नाही. Here, because everybody joining, I think Shivaji Maharaj knew. That is why I think they were joining in the first place, and good quality people were joining. They could have been farmers or whatever that is. So that's one. And second, very, very interestingly, I think you extended that sales point. And as an advisor, we keep on hearing this a lot. As an investment banker, people come to sing that to pitch to VCs. So they say, no, we are good at selling to customers. When they present, it's not a great presentation. So I hear this so often that in sales calls we are good, but we can't present to VCs. So the point that you said, that you have to sell to a landlord from whom you want to take a place. Yes. You have to sell to your first employee to get him. So you are constantly selling. And I think I'll be going after Kapil on that whole sales, because he's made a career first working on it and now making money on it. So I will get to the sales part there. But I think very important for all of us to be in that mode constantly, but based on some reality. So with that, I think since the point is on sales, I think I will also jump directly to Kapil on 2 counts. Okay. So I obviously, Kapil can't ask you the question, the qualities of a founder, because then you will have to. But I would say you are a founder yourself. Okay. But you were an employee earlier. Okay. The prashna असा है कि when at some point you have been a tipping point, right? That you felt कि you've got it inside you. आणि आपल्या इथे काही लोक असतील who might be either studying last year engineering, last year college, and maybe आत्ताच करायचे किंवा few years नंतर करायचे. So we would like to hear live as to what made you feel की अरे you have it in you to become a founder. आणि how did it play out? How did you build on your strengths and so on?
Yeah, so thanks. So actually, I agree. It's actually about what you like to do, in the end. So I shifted in sales when I had done engineering earlier and everything else, but I never enjoyed that part in the first place. So after doing for 10, 12 years, we could see a lot of challenges in the sales ecosystem, lead gen ecosystem. We never thought of actually building it ourselves earlier, but the problem is, it was always at the back of our mind to figure out, is this what I want to do as a job throughout the life, and I was never happy with it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I started attending TIE sessions. Okay. A lot of it actually came from that, honestly. So we used to have these TIE sessions every Thursday in the mid of the afternoon, and I used to bunk the office and go and attend.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And I hope, we got a lot of things from those sessions actually. So one thing of course led to another, and it essentially is the passion that counts. It's
correct.
So I always wanted to do something. I knew it, but I never knew what I wanted to do until this happened. So we kept on thinking about it. I actually scrapped 3 or 4 ideas before I jumped into Cloudera. So you also have to be very ruthless about your ideas. You have to, if it's not working correctly, be very honest with yourself. Continue to work on, find a new one. But don't, just because you have an idea doesn't make it a successful idea. Idea probably in the entire scheme of things, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably 1% of the entire execution part. So 99% is execution. So the 99% execution comes from either the passion part of it, the love for the problem part of it, or the persistence part of it. The passion actually, of course, you can't really define that. There is no word definition for passion, but it's literally like you're jumping out of a plane without a parachute, and you have to build another one before you hit the land, right? If you have a parachute, then you're not likely going to be as passionate about building that airplane fast enough. So having plan A, B, C, D, E is great, nothing wrong in that. But having an escape plan is not to be confused with having plan A, B, C, D. So
interesting.
That is basically what I think can define the starting point of the whole thing.
So I think one interesting take, I think 2 in fact, is, and this is again that we see very, very, in fact, Madhukar would have seen it much more than I, is founders in kind of not just love, but like teenage love with their solution, right? It's complete love. So what I mean is that you are looking at it through काय असतात ते, those lenses, foggy lenses, and then you don't see beyond it. I think that's what you are saying. So that's a solution which he said. I will just frame what he said, which is love the problem, not the solution. So I think that perhaps defines the passion. If you are in love with the wrong thing, then it's a thing. You are in love, so you want to solve it one way or the other. Simple. And then solutions will come. You will keep on rejecting so many solutions. You will keep on updating it. You will not feel bad. I think that's another thing that we see when you look at passion. की feedback दिला तर मग लोकांना आवडत नाही. They feel that because they have worked on it for 2-3 years. I am sure you would have got some wonderful feedback from people or customers who saw your product for the first time.
Yeah, very brutal feedback.
Okay.
and we took it in the stride. That's what sales teaches you to do also, right? We are made for rejection, so that never deterred us.
Correct. That's also nice. Huh? That's a word we should all remember. Made for rejection, like we say, made in India and made for. I think made for rejection is a lovely thing to know, because more often than not, you are going to be rejected. I think we hear so many startup stories, and you will, 20 times rejected, 30 times rejected, and so on. So I would like to get Sunil in here with some comments from 2 perspectives. Sunil has a unique way that he's been part of startups, of the team. So he's seen it from in a sense, both the sides. So in a sense, as a part of a founding team member, but not a founder, okay? you have that neutrality of looking at it, of suggesting corrections, as I was trying to say, the founders maybe, but of course, people like Sunil get to where they are because, yes, they are good corporates, they are good diplomats, but they are also ruthless because no great founder wants a yes man on his side. तो म्हणालाय म्हणून साहेब no. They would like somebody who would do what, but contradict them and build it on their own. So I think that's the experience which Sunil comes from. So Sunil, over to you in terms of founders, because you've seen founders.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you SPPU and Dr. Palkar for such a brilliant initiative, and thanks Vinith for inviting me here. So guys, yes, at least among all the panelists, maybe I am the one who never founded a company or never been a founder. But I have been associated with founders and startups for almost close to 20 years now, right? So I have been seeing this journey of building the startup from the scratch and get it to the point where it get acquired at like $120 million and so on, right? So I have been working with the startup in 1999 when we received like $1 million funding for the storage-based company. And then there was a founder who is my mentor also, and I valued him a lot because I learned a lot from him. His name is Rajiv Nagar. Who is right now in Microsoft, but he founded a company in 1999 when I joined him. So that was my first startup company when I had an offer from Infosys and TCS and all big shot companies, but I joined the startup because I thought that in the small company, when you join a startup like a company or a small company, your opinion get valued, right? You will be heard, right? And you have an opportunity to work at your own liberty, at your own pace, right? So I have been observing this journey for 20 years, working closely with the founders, and it is very, very important. And one quality that I always look forward to see in founders or my bosses, wherever I join, is their conviction in the product. It's so important that their conviction is in the product what they are building, right? Their conviction, right? And it comes, obviously, as we talk literally right now, is how do they sell that product to me when they want to get me on board, right? So it is very important to understand how much, what kind of a conviction they have in their product, what they are doing, and of course the passion comes in. But passion cannot be judged in like, you know, 2 times talking or seeing in the eyes, and that you cannot judge like that, right? For the passion, to understand someone else's passion, you need some facts and some successful journey in the past. Then only we see that, oh, there is a passion, or his struggles, or his fights, or whatsoever it is, right? But what I can gauge or judge when I talk to the founders, or if I want to join someone's hands, then the something that how passionately he's selling the product, right? But at the same time, does it make sense also, right? Because there are people who are good speakers, right? And then there are people who cannot even speak a single word of English too, right? So there are people who struggle to even speak, communicate, or tell that this is what my idea is and I really want you to be a part of my team, right? So if I have to join these founders, I have to see beyond these lines of how is he communicating, right? But what is important is the conviction, and conviction can be judged from the overall body language, overall face, overall the voice, the tone. Because I am an artist also, I am into theater also, so I always tend to watch all this kind of a thing. So you know, you can make it out. Okay, yes, perhaps he is talking like, you know, a brutal honest things to me, and he thinks that what he's working is right, and this is how he wants to grow. And that is one of the things that I always look for the companies or the founders when I want to join them. So fortunately, I have been working with the founders from who are from Pune only, COEP pass out, Snehal Shinde, Swapnil Shinde. I have been associated with them since last 3 startups. 3 successful startup, I will call it. Again, successful is a subjective thing, but I've been working with them and closely watching them. And one of the best qualities they have is, of course, selling quality is there, but they have a solid conviction in their product. So that is like super, like, you know, that's the quality that one should have. Secondly, is that they trust their employees, right? So, for example, if they hired me, like, or I am being a VP of engineering or the head of engineering, when I hire a people in my team, I trust them. So the whole thing start from the having the 100% trust, and then let it evolve to like 500%, or let it evolve to like 10%. But start with the like 100% trust. So they have a tremendous trust on me and all the executive leaders in the startups. and they shows that it reflects from their talks. It like they never takes credits for anything. They speak very high regards. They speak like, about the executive team in almost every all hands, every meeting. They make sure that we understand our own responsibility, so that they don't have to drive the things like by putting the process in place or anything, right? We then work with the same conviction that they have. We sell the things with the same conviction that they have, and the things just fall in place automatically, right? So it is it that these are the aspects that I would say that I always look forward to. And whenever people come to me and ask me that, I'm starting a startup, can you help me for this or hiring or anything? These are the things that I usually look for, right? So
Interesting.
yeah.
Correct. So I think conviction is the key, is basically what you're seeing. And one should have that and be able to relate that. I think there's a common point which is emerging.
Yes.
Yeah. So but also, I think although we had celebrated a sequence of some pointers, etc. I'll also uh, start with these takeaways, because one thing is building this conviction. So we've gone to the end saying conviction आहे, communicate केलं आणि झाली वगैरे. But which is the problem statement? And we see a lot of times that the problem statements are not correctly defined. They are not checked. Market size, that's all of these become kind of challenging things. So typically, there is a separate session on funding. So we are not looking at it purely from funding angle. Why? See, because funding means your VC fund or PE fund has a 10, 20, 30, 40% stake, whatever is that number. But when you look at building your startup, you have a 100% stake. So anything which is good for you is good for them anyways. So when you are building a conviction, when you are thinking, ki, why should I do this product? What are the things that one should look at? Okay, in case you are starting it off, okay, and many times we hear from, if you have to start, for example, like in Madhugar, that market is not large, product may not work, it doesn't, all of these things. And where do founders go wrong there, in your view, when it comes to, and that's the reason that conviction doesn't come, because they themselves, it's not a convincing product in the first place, perhaps.
So, I mean, most of the time, if you're building a product which is solving a problem that you have yourself faced, okay, so you have a much better idea about what that problem is and how people are handling it. But still, there is no foolproof way of really knowing that the problem is big enough, because many time when you're doing something very very new, there is no way to judge also whether the market really exists for this or not. Okay, take this thing of I mean, you probably know about this company called Hupilo. So it's now close to $1 billion company. It does virtual events and so on. And they started in fact before the pandemic. But who knew? I mean, before the pandemic, they were really struggling. So things can change also suddenly. Okay, but most important thing is that first of all, you should have a clear idea about what the problem that you're trying to solve. Do your own due diligence, that you have gone and talked to few customers and figured out that yes, there is a prospect before you even started building. Sort of maybe just over a cup of coffee, or you've seen things that if I do this, will this be of use to you? But that combined with the fact that Sunil talked about, that Kapil talked about, that don't get married to your initial idea, that this is what I have done, and now, I mean, that can be, there is a fine line, obviously, that you don't really run away from your product and solutions at the very first sign of difficulty, but you will need to keep taking stock of where you are, where it is going, and evolve. Because when you start building the product, in my last company, which is now through Series C funding and uh, doing pretty well. Even there, when we started the product had two parts. And when we started going and selling, making pitches to large companies, we realized that the second part was actually derailing the discussion most of the time. And we
Okay.
came back and told people that, look, guys, we are cutting away the second part, which part some of us thought was more important. And we're going to focus only on this part. And the chief architect almost had tears in his eyes that, look, I have put so much effort on this. And we had to really convince him. And finally, that turned out to be the right decision. So many times it's not really something that someone mentioned that plan A to E is all worked out, but having an open mind and being very honest with yourself and taking a feedback, understanding where it is going. The market is becoming, is growing. I can do something here or not. So
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. I think there's this very interesting quote I keep on quoting wherever I can of Muhammad Ali on plans, that everybody has a plan till they get hit in the face. So I think that's about that says everything about plans. So being what you did is a right, you went there, and then people, it was a hit in the face saying this doesn't work. But it's a very tricky decision because people might leave, they might get offended, anything can happen. But a conviction level that that is not needed is so high.
In fact, I'll just add little bit to
Yeah.
that. So even better, we didn't, even worse, because we didn't get really punched in the face. What happened was we had parts of there are two parts of the product. The first part was very new. No one had done something like this. The second part, which we thought is something that could be a hook, which was somewhat like a project management component that came very naturally there. And we knew it's a big market. But the moment you start selling there, people look at our product management part and they'll start comparing with, oh, so how does it compare with a Microsoft project or Primavera and this, that, and that will derail the discussions.
Correct.
And we said we don't want the discussions to be derailed, though that has a clear value proposition. If someone buys it, this is a totally new thing that we are talking about. But we think this is a totally new thing where we want to build because there is just no competition. And we killed the second part.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I would like Anandji to come in here if he would like to comment overall some of the discussion which has happened here. I will keep it open for him. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You see, when it came to the sales, you see, the life is art of negotiation. That is, I always tell people who come to us for the advice. You know, the marketing, or if somebody says that I cannot pitch to the investor, but I can sell my products. It doesn't go like that. You have to be able to sell to at every point. Other thing which I always feel that, you know, when you choose a mentor, or especially the positions which you outsource, one has to be extremely careful. You know, like you have to have gharcha doctor, or you have to have somebody who feels sympathy about what you're doing, somebody who can connect with your problems as well as your strengths. So when you're outsourcing something, if you are taking some help from outside, then that person, even a mentor, even the mentor should be someone who has to, you know, a teacher cannot teach pottery without soiling his own hands. So somebody who gets involved with you. So I always feel that a mentor, getting a right mentor or getting a right advisor, same way right your investor. The investor also has to have sympathy, has to have own feeling about your product, about your company. Then only the company can progress. Other thing, just I'll take another 2 minutes. I remember everybody, when these discussions come up, everybody says that as if the IT is the only, or technology is the only startup field. There are startups which are way smaller and they make good money, good percentage of money. It may not be billions of dollars, but they start with 1,000 and they are earning 100,000. So that's the earning. I remember a small story that I was traveling from Churchgate to Andheri. It started raining in April, and by the time I came down to Andheri, there was some young guy selling pouches for mobiles. You know, this is the innovation that he had. You know, he knew the customer need. He came up. But these sort of a small, real, good entrepreneurs do not get support. So institutions like SPPU or institutions, those are incubation innovation centers, which are plenty of them. They must pick up these people. And actually, from this faraway place, we are trying to do that. You know, I want to say only that. Thank you very much for giving me a chance.
Oh, thank you, sir. So I think, interestingly, I think since I had the privilege of being here and as somebody associated as a neutral person as well last 3 years, I think that's what the CIL and Dr. Palkar's been trying to do, which is in fact one of the things, ma'am, I remember was taking this orientation program for about 200 colleges. I mean, the innovation heads of 200 colleges. And these were like spread all over, rural, semi-rural, and so on and so forth. So they were starting with, you know, what is innovation, incubation, that kind of thing. But the word, so you end up reading on WhatsApp, but beyond the point, you do not know. So for example, one of the things we were talking to some of these people was that it need not be tech. So in some rural place, far away from an urban location, innovation could be in agri-input storage for that matter. You know, how do you store, how do you transport? And I remember one case study very distinctly when, because we had a second session, as you said, as an example. So one college innovation, he said that after hearing all of this, there was a group of students was interested in doing something and in stationery, etc. They had done some gifting, etc. So college put the order, gave them order of creating all of these, files and stationery, etc. customized for the college. So it's an interesting thing, way of starting, because in a place of say 10,000, 20,000 population, you may not have that kind of a thing, and so on and so forth. And the same skill sets they can use for weddings, etc., etc. So you're right, sir. Grassroots level innovation is the point I think you are making, and that typically for-profit organizations find it difficult to do, and that's where this role comes in. So,
Vinit, can I make one point?
Yeah, sure.
Is this working?
Yeah,
Hello? Yeah. So, see, I mean, we've already established that, sales skills are necessary. You have to sell to your investors, you have to sell to your customers, you have to sell to your employees also, like Atul mentioned, right? So, everywhere you have to sell. But how do you do that is a big question, and not everyone typically is built for that also. It's a fact. There is nothing wrong in that, right? Like probably Atul will be able to code Python, but if you put a gun on my head and ask me to code for 10 hours, I couldn't do that, right? So, like I can do this, somebody else can do that. What you can do in this is basically sales comes from conviction, and there is no way to build conviction other than knowledge. So what you can at least do is whatever problem you are pitching to anybody, whether it is employee, investor, or anything, you can tell to yourself that there is going to be nobody who will know more about this problem than I do. If you can have that knowledge, if you can go and get out on the ground, ask questions, get to know everything that is there to know about that problem that is out there, then you can have the conviction and you will almost become a very good sales guy.
Okay.
So that is a good path to be that. The knowledge will get you there. The rest of the skills are only presentations. So that can be worked upon.
Correct. So that brings me to a next question in terms, since we are talking of skill sets, somebody having sales, somebody. So one of the things is founders and co-founders. So if we can start with you and then come back to others, should one, I know there's no standard answer, but does it make sense if you're starting off to have a co-founder? What are the advantages? Or does it make sense to just go on your own? Broad, by and large, basically.
So absolutely. I mean, you need to have a co-founder. I personally feel that. I did not have it, by the way. So I think if we had a co-founder on the day of we started, we could have probably shortened our journey by 3 years. But we didn't have that. So I had to pull both sales and engineering. See, it's like you're driving a car right now and you're on the steering. Your front two wheels are basically engineering and sales, which is pulling the engine ahead, and your back two engines are marketing, HR and finance. So if you are doing one of these two things right now, if you are the engineering person, then you are becoming a wheel. And anytime you are doing this role, you have to remember that there is nobody at the steering looking at the car where it is going. Whether it is getting driven at the right speed, at the right direction. So if you are doing coding, there is nobody looking at the car's direction. If you are doing sales, there is nobody looking at the car's direction. So you need to have somebody to balance that load out. It will come at equity, it will come at partnership, but you need to have somebody to balance that other skill. At least engineering and sales to begin with.
Okay.
Remaining can follow.
So the core part of anything. So it could be develop. Whatever are the two top, and these are typically one. There's sales and there is production, development. Each industry has the same thing, right? Some engine. So I think one takeaway is it does help. It's a backstop. We'll also hear Madhukar on that because he'll be hearing all kinds of companies with co-founders. But of course, then with co-founders comes the challenge of setting up that relationship, different views. So the plus is there. So how problematic is the minus? Can it be tackled? And what's your view on that? Yeah.
So absolutely, MC. Most of the startups actually die because of co-founders, whether you have them or whether you don't have them.
Okay.
So one way or the other, it's that problem. If you don't have them, you're gonna struggle. If you have them, you have to figure out a way to not step on each other's toes.
Okay. So set up some system.
Yeah, you have to have that in place. Now, even if you are the founder, somebody else has come in later, you need to give him his space. So if somebody I've hired as an engineer, as a VP of engineer, I need to trust I have hired him because he knows better than I do in that problem.
Correct.
So he has a scope of things which I will never step on. I can give him a suggestion, I can walk out after that.
That's very important, Kapil.
But it is
despite being a
his
founder,
call.
You will say that, look, what you're doing is right. Because situations will come where your gut feels something different, but he says ki aisa karna hai.
Yeah.
That might perhaps need more money. And then you technically have a veto because you might be majority. So you are saying, yes, by and large, let him do his job.
Correct. And the combination has to be set in such a way that we are all complementing each other's skills.
Okay.
If two sales guys are starting it or two engineering guys starting it, it's not a very good combination in the first place.
Right.
Because then you will always keep on touching each other's toes on that matter.
Correct.
But if it is not if it's complementing each other, then it becomes an easy journey. Then it's only about setting up the right rules.
Correct. And Sunil, you've across the startups, how was your experience? Were there co-founders and how was
Yeah, yeah, there were almost all the time they were co-founders, and as you rightly said at the end that they should complement each other, right? So, fortunately, in my case, the twins, these brothers who are co-founders of maximum startups, they complement each other also, right? So one is good in sales, for example, another is good in technology. Even within the technology, one is good in front end, another good in back end. So they complement each other so well, right? What I have seen, and even before that also, and I have seen a couple of other startups which shut down unfortunately eventually, is the reason that the co-founders doesn't come on the same page. It's so important that they should complement each other, and even they don't have to be on the same page all the time, right? What are
Okay.
the arguments, what are the discussions? Not every time you agree to everyone, right? Now neither you are bound to agree, right? Even founders are working with me and I am head of engineering, they give my own space as well, right? If they don't give, then I will not able to perform, right? So in vocals, generally when you record your voice ना, there is a this decibel dB करके एक रहता है,
Correct.
right? So dB मध्ये कसं असतं की when you are giving your vocals for the mastering, you have to give -10 dB का wave file to the mastering. -10 dB इसलिए because the master guy who does the mastering of that vocals, he needs a space to like
Interesting.
to improve that vocals eventually, right? To tune it better, right? So you need a space, and as a founders, even the co-founders, they should learn to give a space to each other, also to the employees, right? When I hire a people, I hire with the full confidence and the conviction that I know that these guys are going to perform, right? Though I am a head of engineering, I need not have to be like part of their everyday job, everyday task, do the micromanagement. And I have some thought of like, building the technology this way, and there is a 2 years guy who might be an IITian or NITian or even non from the tier 1 college, and he has some idea, I have to listen, right? I have to like patiently listen to that idea, figure it out whether it will work or not. If it works, the idea coming from like a 2 year engineer guy, and I still have a better idea, but his idea is going to work, I still have to give a highest priority to his idea and let it work, right? I may think the solution or the idea that I have is a better than the idea that coming from the 2 year engineer guy. But if I feel that it will work, it may not create or cause the problem. I should give a space, and that is what exactly I have seen in my founders, whoever I work with. They may have a better suggestions, better ideas, and everything else too. But if I come up with an idea and a suggestion, they give me a space. They let me perform. If unless and until they see that no, it's absolutely not going to work, we have a closed room discussions, not in front of anyone, because none of the engineers should know that whether we are on the same page or not, because these
Correct.
are
That's
the
also
closed room
important, yeah.
discussions. And then we do the brainstorming, and then we come up with the better solution. But otherwise, if I come up with the simple solution to any problem, they say yes to it and they let me perform. And that is how it should be in any company, in any startup, especially in the startups. In startups, people get into the so much of the arguments of like pushing their thoughts, their ideas, their way out. And everyone is smart, right? Everyone is good, everyone is like potential, everyone has their own ideas, and everyone has their own way to work. But they keep struggling, keep fighting. They just stuck there, like मेरा idea अच्छा था, उसका idea ये, अरे ऐसा ही करेंगे, वैसे ही करेंगे, and this is how it should be done. And they just get stuck there and doesn't just perform, right? It's just impact your organization. So creating that space is very
Very
important.
important. Correct. So, Madhukar, what's your take? I mean, you would have been both. I mean, you've been in startups and now as other side.
Yeah, as I said, most of my life I have been in startups, and fortunately, it has been such a situation that in all the time, I mean, all the cases, the three companies that I was one of the founders, all of our co-founders had very, very, very good relation. So I never, in fact, two of my companies, in reality, which got acquired by Symphony Services, and then currently Sapiens. In fact, we were the same three founders, and Swati also in the fourth one. She was the core person who came up with the idea. And the thing is, I would never think of doing a startup without a co-founder.
Okay.
Okay, and as a VC, when we are evaluating companies, if a company has a single founder, we generally look at it with. I mean, it definitely is a mark against that company,
Okay.
because you're as a VC, you're almost always looking for companies which has at least two founders. Because again, as I said, it's a very lonely journey. There will be time when I am depressed and my partners will be able to cheer me up. I mean, it's not like cheer me up in the sense I'm sitting and
correct.
crying, but when I'm having negative thoughts that whether
Correct.
this will work or not, my partners can. It's very rare that all three of you are having very negative thoughts going on at the same time.
Correct.
But partners, co-founders not working together, that's a challenge. I mean, like everything that Sunil, for example, talked about, giving space, etc., in the team, it's valid for any team, whether you're in a startup or you're in a large company working in a large team. It's just that because an amount of stress is so much higher in a startup, all the problems start showing up much more. So these are standard practices, like you have to give space, you have to still, you should not be yes man, because you really own the solution. You really think deeply about the product. If there is something that you feel is wrong, you should talk about it, you should be ready to discuss and then eventually come to a solution. So having a co-founder is a big plus. Even if you are scared that whether it will work out or not, it is one of the risks that goes with creating a startup. You take this risk also and find the
Correct.
right co-founder and build good relation. Doing it alone is much tougher.
Correct. So I think the conclusion, I think there's a very straight consensus here. Anandji, Tumala, if you would like to contribute something, most welcome. I'll just make a quick, nothing. Okay. So quick comment is, I think, yeah. Oh yeah. So
No,
sorry.
I'm okay. I'm listening.
Okay. Yeah, if somebody has a
listening.
question, okay, I missed that. So if somebody has a question, just raise your hand. I think we can just hear you from there. So I think we'll just take a question straight away. And as you've seen, we are having very candid discussions. These are all very senior execs. We are, I would say, privileged, fortunate. They are literally opening their heart out. These are not conversations that senior execs do just like that. So I think we're very happy and thank you guys for this. In terms of co-founder, and I think the interesting bit is a lot of these questions when they get asked, we get as ambivalent or doubtful answers. I think today a lot of questions we are just hitting the ball out of the park very clearly. So when you say co-founder, yes, the bias is in favor of having. वो लड्डू खा के पछताने की चीज है is what you are saying basically. So eat it, okay, and then you will figure out how to digest it and so on. And also there's an interesting thing which Kapil stands for. So if some of us have started companies where we've started a company, we don't have a co-founder. Still you can keep looking for and get a co-founder later. I think that's an example that he personifies, because he's taken on a co-founder later, which is even trickier if you say personally, because company, the largest risk is kind of when you start. And for example, if you've crossed that over and then you are taking a co-founder, and at that stage also you start feeling that you can do everything. Another important thing that is said is then at that stage, the dilemma also is, should I take a co-founder or an employee? I can pay somebody very well. And why do I? Because co-founder also comes, if it does well, with a prestige and respect, technically also sharing the dais and so on and so forth, right? So those personal, if at all they are there, you also have to overcome. One big issue, I think it's 5 to 12, ma'am. We finished by 12-ish, right? One of the things that I want to talk, which very commonly comes up in startups, is money, how to raise money, we'll not tackle here. There's another session. But for a lot of things, founders say there's no money. Okay, and we've somebody who's been part of companies, funds companies, and obviously has. So because there's very limited money available to start off with, partly genuinely, partly as an excuse, it is given that things can't be done because there is no money. So when you're starting up, how do you start with very limited? So frugally, how do you start? So idea is low cost innovation, frugal innovation. I think in a lot of presentations we see that is not available. So how do you hit the market, get off a product, and do something which you wish to do, assuming it's a genuinely good product, etc., etc. So that's one challenge that we see. So any comments that can be had are welcome.
I'll just make one comment and then experts can talk about it basically, because they have actually a better experience of like founding companies and funding also. So to me, because I have been associated with the startup ecosystem for many years, though I'd never founded a company, but I have been working with and advising a lot of startups, lot of founders, and I have seen one common scenario in most of the people who are reaching out to me. They come up with the idea. They have idea, they know that this is the idea I have and I want to work on it, right? but they don't know how to solve it themselves because maybe they don't know the technology, and because they may be knowing only the business aspect of it, right? So most of the time, founders or the these entrepreneurs who have been reaching out to me, they always have a business idea, but they never have a technology solution. So they always come to me and see me to help them either in like bootstrapping in technology, or getting someone who knows the technology, or helping in hiring them to have at least one technology person. But these guys have always the business idea, right? So what happens in that case is, basically, if you have an idea, and you then start searching for someone who can implement the idea for you, then most of the time the startup doesn't work. That's what my observations are, and it could be wrong also, but that's what my observations are, right? If you have an idea, that is not the time you should start a startup. If you have a solution, that is the time you should start a startup. That's what I felt from my journey, right? So if you have an you know the problem statement, and you know how to solve that problem statement yourself, that is how you have to start it, right? You should know what are your strengths. Unless there are people around you, or there are friends, or who can join you as a co-founders from the day one, who will tell that, what, I'll implement, you manage the business side, or you manage the sales side, I'll do this, you do this, right? They complement each other. That is the time then you can even start the startup, even though you just have an idea, but you have someone who can work with you as a co-founder to implement that idea, right? But otherwise that's what where I found that most of the startups actually failed. So come with the solution, if you can solve it, then definitely come with that, and then definitely you can start it. And innovation is very subjective again, right? For the same problem, you see the 100 solution, which is the simplest and the simplified solution, people go for that. So you can find still a solution for the existing problems also, and still innovate it, right?
Right.
That is what I would
So
say.
interesting. So I think Kapil said it earlier when he said that ideas are overrated. Where a brilliant idea. So execution, whether you can implement it is the key. And sometimes we see some very, very, if you take names, Dunzo for example, there's maybe huge technology at the back. So a lot of these actually workable or large companies, unicorns or otherwise, are actually very simple solutions. Deliver from place A to place B and so on. I mean, back में बहुत complex होगा. But they are solving a very basic need at a basic level and so on. So, in fact, we'll also, along with this of problem, since you're talking on idea and execution, I would also like the two of you to address something interesting that we again come across, where people then talk, this thing as a patent, which again, or that I have solved it in such a brilliant way, and so on and so forth. So that connecting it to the market, connecting to what is needed, also there's sometimes one feels a gap, and they feel because it's great, solution is great, it is fundable, scalable, etc. I think so. There are two things, Madhukar, if you'd like to take up on this. Yeah.
Now, for example, if someone comes and tells me, and this I had seen this when I was working for a brief period of time, larger companies also, and there's a guy who will come to me many times and say, I have got a brilliant solution for this. And then what is the brilliant part? You need to understand. I mean, if brilliant because I have used the most complex algorithm, then in my mind, it's not really the brilliant solution. The brilliant solution is something which makes it really, really easy for the end user to use it somehow, easy, scalable, etc. So yeah, brilliant solution is a great thing, but you need to define what that brilliant means. And if you have an IP, etc., yeah, definitely it again helps if patented IP. And but that is not really required necessarily in each and everything. If it is, we didn't really have time to go into that deep tech versus simple tech. But if you are doing something really, really deep tech, then probably in that case, a patented IP, etc., can create security around your solution for some time, not forever, but it can give you a little bit of step ahead of others. You can keep ahead of others for some time before others find different ways to solve the same problem. So, yeah, I mean, definitely a good solution, brilliant solution will do better than non-brilliant solution. Consider assuming you know what brilliant means.
Correct, the implementation. So I think I want to cover that deep. So I think post Kapil, let's come back to this deep tech, because technology thing, because now technology is meaning everything. What time? So last question, 12 o'clock. Okay, done. So we'll go to Kapil, if you have a comment on this, on the...
Yeah, so just
idea.
one quick thing. So we talked about, knowing the problem and finding a solution before going to funding. I'll just add one more step to that is actually having a customer buying that solution.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have, if you feel there is a problem and you've solved it and you think it's a brilliant solution, great, no, nothing wrong in that. But if other people don't agree with you that
Correct.
they also want to pay for it,
Correct.
then there is no point in getting a funding. So
Correct. Same which happened with Madhukar.
So,
Really not hard.
I'll just add to, you're absolutely right. I'll just add one thing, small thing to that. Very rarely will a VC be happy to fund you to build a product. Only if there is something really groundbreaking that you're doing. Most of the time, a VC or institutional investors, friend and family investment is a very different thing. Institutional investor will invest when they think you have the product, you have some sort of product market fit because you have found the customers who are ready to buy it. They put money so that you can sell better. You already have found the flywheel. This way, if you throw money, it will spin faster and you will be able to sell faster. Very rarely you will get money for building the product.
So Anandji, thank you once again. Thank you, Kapil, Sunil, Madhukar, for this lovely. I think the best, really panel discussion that I had. Very candid, very insightful. Lot of takeaways. I'd also asked a couple of people from my team to kind of take notes. They have. I think we'll have lots to take away from here. Thank you.
Should I answer this? Yeah, sure. I mean, one of the thing is you cannot be driving your car continuously looking at a rear view mirror that someone will steal my idea. Okay, so you have to, while you have to take some care, obviously if you know definitely this guy has a reputation for stealing the ideas or whatever it is, don't disclose each and everything, but you'll have again a lot of risk that you take, and this is one of the risk. If you need money at that time, if you don't need money at all, great. You don't need to talk about your product or ideas to anyone. But if you need money, this is a risk that you need to take, and you just need to be so good in execution because, you know, again, even when you build a product, the idea is overrated. Your execution skill and your deeper understanding of empathy with the customer, that what exactly that customer is facing, that no one can steal that easily. They can steal an algorithm. Okay, they can steal a piece of code, but your connect with the customer, not just how you're selling, but understanding what exactly I'm trying to give to customer, very difficult to steal. Sometimes it happens. You must have seen that a $1 billion code, a series on Netflix and so on. So you can always find an exception and be scared because of that, but there is no need in my view. Okay, be careful, take usual care, but do whatever needs to be done.
If you are worried about your idea being stolen, it's fine. There's nothing wrong in that. The problem you should be more worried about is if nobody wants to steal your idea, then is it even worth valid?
Yes.
So if it is getting stolen, that means you're on the right track. So I think that's a good enough proof
Yeah.
you can have.
I'll just add to that. So in my journey of all the startups, I always hearing this from founders that, you know, if there is a competition, in fact, even in the startup, like for example, I am working at Zeni as VP, and there is a competition with Pilot, and Pilot recently received, I guess, more than $100 million of funding at $1 billion valuation. So we shouldn't be unhappy. We should be happy that our space is validated. So right, you know, so don't feel insecure or scared when you see all these things are happening around you. It should actually boost you other way around.
I always remember Kiran saying this from Tai, ki whenever you shout out on your idea, there will be 50 people already knowing about your idea. So this is what it is, but it's all about execution that you all mentioned. Thank you so much.